All
What's up,
right.
fellow gamers? Phreak here. I'm the design lead of Summoners Rift Team's live pod, and I want to talk about some various projects that are or aren't in flight that you'll tend to see towards the end of this year, maybe early next, and things that Live have worked on or are working on that I just want to share updates on. Let's go. All right, so table of contents. We're going to talk about things that I brought up around Aphelios, Swain, changes to the bounty system, overall nerfs to items. We had announced some changes to our griefing detection, and I forget if I brought this up or not, but one of the things we're investigating is summoner teleport and the idea of hard losing lane without one. And also just a disclaimer that none of this coming into the Worlds patch. Some of it might be coming to the patch after Worlds, we'll see. Depends on how things are ready, but let's talk about these various things.
So the list is pretty cool. Maybe a little bit short. Wish there was more, but it's really cool, right? So Aphelios, I know there was like conversation to make him more auto attack heavy. There's like Swain. There's been conversation. Swain rework is happening. I saw some Discord screenshots of the person who's working on Swain rework, and then he was talking about certain things like I think, and then I know also like Riot August like really wants to make Swain like he thinks like Swain is like doesn't synergize with Swain kit at all. Like the spell works completely like against Swain as a champion because you know it doesn't like empower Swain to be like the spell is too dodgeable when you're too close to it. I guess it's like it doesn't work really well when you're a melee on top of someone, which should be Swain's identity. Then we have like bounties. This one I'm personally really happy to see because bounty system has been trashed for God knows how long. Then we have item nerf. Obviously depends what it is, but like item nerfs, I think is like I've said like a couple of times that I think there's like too much damage in the game. And this was like a problem even more before with like mythic items. Now it's like better, but I still think we're a little bit like too much damage, too much things in like tools. I would say too much stats. Certain items like Moose Pit is this season, for example, is ridiculous. And like it's not. I think items being nerfed is like a good thing. Teleport, hard losing lane. Griefing detection. That's like I guess just good for reporting. Teleport, hard losing lane. Yeah, there's been like discussions about teleport for some time now, and like I know there's like a lot of discussions about that. You know whether teleport is like should be nerfed or you shouldn't be able to use it the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game or whatever, and then like yeah,
What their goals are, what we're doing, and what you might expect to see in them. Okay, no planned changes for Aphelios, at least not shape-wise. I had brought up a couple months ago the idea that we might move Aphelios toward being more of an auto-attacking style champion. There are no plans to do that at this point in time. I am a fan of floating ideas of things I've only given a little bit of thought to or things that people have brought up to me, and I'm like, this seems reasonable at face value, defaulting to trust and all that. And then I'll just let people react to that. It's kind of nice. So for example, this was an accident, but we accidentally put a change to Kaisa W on the PBE. That was an implementation mistake from the designer to change the scripting file in the wrong location. That meant it went to PBE and would have gone live. We didn't catch it. But it meant that we suddenly had a lot of discussion from players around like what that feels like, what that's going to mean. And so it's nice to kind of float things in sort of not like unofficial channels, but like, hey, they're not live. They're only there if you're really paying attention, like you're watching PBE scrapes or you're watching my videos when I'm at home. And they're just nice ways to get invested players to discuss stuff. And again, these aren't all intentional, but hey, anyway, by floating the idea, I saw a lot of comments from players who were like, hey, I really prefer Aphelios as more of a caster style ADC. And it's like, okay, fair. I'm seeing all these comments, and I went and looked at Aphelios's breadth and depth. So
before I continue, the Kaisa W change is something I talked about because a lot of people have like asked me in stream, and I said already like not gonna talk about it because there's no way that's intentional. It would be one of the most stupid, like really stupid idea to implement into the game. There's no way, like there's no way a spell like Kaisa W should be able to pierce through multiple champions. It is incredibly stupid to put that in the game.
Comments on the another one thing, they have some value, and they're certainly good at, you know, putting words to things, but they're not always indicative of the player base at large, especially when the English-speaking community is not representative of the League of Legends community at large. But one thing I looked at was then, okay, well, let's look at historically Aphelios' breadth and depth. Breadth is the number of players who are interested in playing Aphelios and do play on any given patch's time, and depth is of those players who played Aphelios, how much Aphelios did they play? And this is all normalized against the number of champions of the game and everything else, right? So it's a fully normalized score. Generally speaking, the times where Aphelios has been more caster skewed have been the ones where he's had a deeper player base. That ultimately, when Aphelios is more of a spellcaster, players play more Aphelios per Aphelios player, which generally means that that's a better shape for the champion, and so Aphelios should be a bit more spellcaster skewed. Maybe not more than he is now, necessarily. I don't have a real strong opinion here, but it clearly indicates that players seem to enjoy the caster version more, and so no plans to change him to be more of an auto-attacker. Cool. Next champion to talk about is Swain. This is still a bit away.
Okay, so here I'm a little bit confused, right? So the Aphelios is like, okay, we're not gonna do anything to him, but I'm a little bit confused when he says like, oh, with players who play a lot more Aphelios are more caster skewed. Like, wouldn't that apply to every single champion in League of Legends? Like, the better you are to the champion, the more you're going to be utilizing his abilities to its max potential. I don't really get where he's coming from here, right? Like, I don't get how the fact that, like, how that supports his point at all. That would apply to every champion, as far as I can imagine. And if they were to make changes to Aphelios, making it more auto attack based, then the ladder would apply.
If I didn't have other projects in flight, I could have this done in time for the patch after Worlds. We intentionally, even if it was ready, would not ship it on the Worlds patch. So this is a bit away. I don't expect it to be in 0.19. It would still be a little farther away because there's other larger priorities going on. I want to talk about some things that I've identified around Swain that I think are important to talk about. So number one is actually his role identity. So Swain is in a spot now where I don't think it is reasonable, or I should say responsible, to strictly buff Swain. Swain is in a spot where he's 52 to 53% win rate in almost every MMR, in both mid lane and bot lane. As Swain is not a trivially...
No, yeah, he says in almost every MMR, but he mostly means here low MMR, because the issue is that the higher MMR you go as Swain, the sample size becomes very, very low. So even though the win rate in high MMRs can still be okay, this is like, because it's only played by the top tier OTPs who also pick him in the right spot, so it's like fake data.
Easy to play champion. That is not the kind of thing where you can say, well, it's kind of like Sona support where she's quite easy, or a Mumu jungle where he's very straightforward, or is so low elo skewed that we're going to kind of split the difference and he'll be OP in one elo, but, you know, weak in another. It's like, now Swain in mid and bot lane is relatively flat with MMR and quite high in overall win rate. This does not mean he feels powerful to play, but it means he's winning a lot of games, and I acknowledge Swain doesn't feel great to play, but we are not at a point where we can just give him power. I don't think that is responsible to say your champion doesn't feel good, be overpowered instead. Now he feels good, he's overpowered, we did it. Like, I think that betrays every other player in the game, and we should make the champ more fun to play, right? We should, basically, champions have a win rate budget that to me is informed by two things. I made a video about this, you can check it on my channel. It's informed by how hard they are to play, and similarly how many mains they have, aka, you know, overall mastery curves, and how much agency they have, because this is basically the misplay budget, right? The more agency a champion has, the more players have room to misplay. And if we're saying we expect you to be good at your champion, a high agency champion is going to have lost win rate because no one's perfect. And, you know, the point that we hit is sort of aqueous, but a champ with literally no agency could never misplay. A champ that's incredibly easy to play could never misplay. They're just going to have the highest win rate in the game, because what else is there to do if you can't make any mistakes, right? And everyone else is making mistakes around you, and we expect players to be competent at what they're playing. Anyway, let's get back on the point.
The video is not 2x, the video is 1.25x.
Which is the role identity for Swain, which is for his power level, he feels very bad to play in farming roles. His most popular role by far is support. As a support, he is incredibly low elo skewed, whatever. And even with that in mind, his win rates are lower than I think would be reasonable for him otherwise. He is a popular support, he is a weak support, he is a very performant mid and bot laner, and we can't simply bribe him with more power because that betrays everyone else in the game, rather than play against Swain, who is just simply overpowered from a numerical perspective. Which again, I don't think is reasonable, and I hold balance as like a relatively high quality here. Other people may disagree and have different stances here. That's what I believe, and so that is sort of where we are right now. Now, the changes to Swain, as they are right now, are not incredibly high scope. There's no spell replacements. There's no new animations or VFX or whatever. That said, every spell in this kit is being touched. And hopefully all, you know, for the better. Like, I think an example of this is the second Seraphine update that we delivered in, the very beginning of this year or end of last year? I forget the second one, though. The first one sucked. The second one was much better. I did both. The first one sucked. The second one was better. And it got to the point where Seraphine now is technically a little bit overpowered, so we're nerfing her in point 17. But Seraphine is at her, like, highest breadth and depth since launch. Like, version 2 was a very big success. And so if I can replicate that, that's what we're doing here with Swain, right? Which is some usability adjustments, some stuff to make her feel a lot better to play, give her the room to do well, feel like a mage, not to be a mage, feel like...
Why is he saying her as Swain? Like, what?
Right, which is some usability adjustments, some stuff to make her feel a lot better to play, give her the room to do well, feel like a mage, not to be a mage, feel like the support was trying to be a support. Okay, great. So generally speaking, the style adjustments are around Q usability. So in general, the supposition here is that Q is too sharp. Swain is, at least from a Q and R perspective, incredibly good into melee champions. Like, Swain's best support in bot lane matchups, for example, or anytime someone plays Nautilus. Like, oh, are you playing a low damage melee champion? I auto-win because you can't DPS check my heal in R. My Q does like 2.5x damage. I'm just going to win, and you can't do much about this. Yes, the E sucks in melee, understood. We'll get to that later. But as far as, like, can Swain play against ranged champions? Doesn't feel very good. It's land your E and have nothing else to do. Not great. And so this is somewhat flattening out Q, as well as messing with things like mana cost to feel like he has the agency to press his primary like offensive spell in lane, and it actually feels good to use. He's not running out of mana. It doesn't.
Okay, so the thing I'm reading here is that the Q is too good when people are short range because it does a lot more damage, but the Q is too bad when you play against a range champion because the only gameplay you have in your kit is landing the E. If you don't land E, then your champion does nothing. Which is true, this is what Swain's weakness has always been. This is why Swain sucks against champions like Syndra and Azir and all these type of champions who completely outrange him, right? So I guess where he's coming from is they're gonna make the Q better when you're just using it from range, or maybe weaker when somebody is like super close to you. So it's like kind of moving direction of Swain to be like super anti-melee, to be like not as good against melee, but also not as bad against range.
An appreciable amount of damage, even against other range champions, of which there are a lot in mid lane, for example. And hopefully this makes him feel a lot better to play per power budget. Per win rate, you should feel better to play, getting a more reliable Q that works in more situations, that isn't as expensive in some contexts. The second one is consistency on his E. So the way Swain E is scripted right now on live is the missile acceleration is handled by the scripting. This actually causes a lot of issues. I went and timed like 20 casts of E, and I put some debugging in the scripting, and it was like, oh, Swain E will take like, I forget the numbers, I haven't written down somewhere else, but like Swain E will take like 20 or 25% more or less time to explode based on cosmic rays. It is inconsistent. And so you'd be like, well, I learned the Swain E timing. No, sorry. The game waited 4 more frames. It didn't reach the expiration like location in time. So Syndra walked away. All right, no, it actually went really early. Your opponent had no chance to counterplay. And like, generally speaking, consistency in output is incredibly skewed toward the caster. It being very inconsistent doesn't help the caster very much because you'll fail sometimes, and the good cases don't really make it any better for you. In a lot of cases, they don't. So what was funny is, so I re-scripted this to use like native in-engine missile acceleration, so it's no longer like laggy in when the missile accelerates. And I was like, well, while I'm here, because everyone feels like the E really sucks to press, I'm going to make it faster. And literally, even having it explode 1 frame sooner than the like normal like mean median explosion timing, everyone consistently said from every play test, from every player, was like, this feels too fast. And so the timing of the E is now the mean and median of the timing on live, except that there's no longer any variant. It is always 10 or whatever frames. And this is now people like, this is the edge of acceptable. So even though it's not technically faster on average, the fact that it's consistent has like done a ton for the feel of the skill being good. Which I'm also pretty sure is a lot of power, and so is a pretty big deal for Swain players. And eventually I'll publish the actual numbers, like when I can look up the ticket or whatever.
I mean, that's a good thing, right?
Like, it's wild how much is going on here, so this is actually a pretty big deal. The second thing is that the acceleration back to Swain is being objectively sped up, which means if it's not getting blocked by minions, the total time to like reach Yone who's like on top of you or whatever.
Oh, so they're gonna speed up the E2. So when E starts going backwards to you, it's going to be very sped up. And what that's going to do is that's going to make melee champions specifically have a much harder time dodging the E.
Whatever is meaningfully faster, is meaningfully shorter, such that Swain...
put subtitles, they don't exist.
In the melee case, he got Q's a bit weaker, but his E like will be consistent hitting a range target. And it'll be strictly better hitting a melee one, where it was already a very, very long delay, and honestly the melee champ solves all the agency in dodging it, but it will give Swain a lot more agency in all cases of using E, which is going to feel a lot better, which is very good, because his pick tool is getting a lot better. That will generally give him support win rate, which is where a lot of his players are right now. Next thing is talking about just overall tweaks to E and W's power share, and just sort of overall tweaks to like things like AP scaling. So I think most Swain players would agree that W doesn't fit the kit very well. If Swain is a battle mage, Q, E, R, and passive are all great skills. Consistency and usability aside, the shape of the skills that they're trying to do are all pretty reasonable spells. To say, I'm a battle mage, I have repeatability, I probably want some durability here, I'm gonna like surround myself with 5 enemy champions, I'm gonna build Landry's, I'm gonna build Riley's, I'm gonna build Zonies, I'm gonna feel good about all these things, I'm gonna be tanky. Those all work. W is like some random skill off on the side. Which doesn't fit the battle mage kit, unfortunately. Now, there's totally a world where we're like, Swain is a tactician, actually. He's got these long-range tools, he's gonna scout you, and he's gonna get like a unique trinket like Fiddlesticks does. There's like a lot of things you could do to do an entire full-scale rook of Swain. To be like, Swain, the master tactician, using the, Legends of Runeterra level up and, putting the stamp on the map and it burning away, and then when you damage the Nexus, it stuns their backline. We're getting off topic. But I think we're much closer to Swain the battle mage than Swain the master tactician. I realize that's what he's titled. Swain is primarily a battle mage. I think that is why players are playing him. So what this generally means is playing up that E is Swain's secondary skill, and W is kind of flavor, sort of in the way that like Ashe has Hawkshot, and Hawkshot is a totally viable 1-point wonder and feels good for Ashe to use. Hawkshot is not where most of her power budget is, and that's fine. She just has Hawkshot, and Hawkshot feels like good utility. Broad strokes, that is what I feel works for W. And we can say Q and E are actually your primary skills. They are good. They're going to feel good to use. They are your primary throughput. W should feel fine as a one-point wonder. We can probably get tuning that says if you really want to choose between W and E, you can. Feel free. Go have fun, buddy. But playing up Swain is a QE champion because E, let's be clear, is way more usable and way more consistent than W.
Okay.
And so finding the numbers that make this make sense here so that Swain can safely press QE and rank up QE and feel good about them.
Okay, so that's interesting. I've never really heard anyone say this because Riot August was talking about how Swain E, he thinks the E is like a big problem, and then Phreak is here saying that he thinks the W is a big problem. So they have like a little bit of different takes. It is true that it feels kind of random that Swain can like W through half of the map, and it doesn't really like make sense with the kid, but at the same time, like it's also cool that a champion can do such thing. But I guess, okay, what they're gonna do here is, I guess they're just gonna make level up incentive on E a lot better than level up incentive on W. So they're gonna try to make it so you max Q into E in every case instead of Q into W, which I think is the build right now.
And then again, tweaks to ability power ratios and whatnot. This is simply they're still in flight here. Ultimately, we have to do the final tuning pass when we're done with everything else. But broadly, the goals here are playing up AP ratios overall. One thing I've discovered is a lot of champions whose AP ratios are quite low, and it drives them to...
So he's talking about leveling up AP ratios. Swain's AP ratios has always been historically very low. This is why, as a champion, he also historically used to buy like a lot of like items that didn't give, you know, a lot of AP, but they rather gave like other things like Lianji and Raleigh and Roa. Like he did buy AP items, it's just that he would rather have like also passives on and HP and all that stuff. So it's interesting they're gonna buff the AP ratios, right? Because that's also gonna make him scale a lot better, because this is also one of his weaknesses.
To rely purely on systems for damage output. Now, I don't expect Swain to ever not go Leandris unless we remake the ultimate. It is a long duration damage everyone around me for, you know, refreshing spell effects. Like Leandri's Rileys will not leave Swain's item repository unless he has a new ulti. That's fine. I don't think it's actually a huge deal. Also,
that makes sense, yeah.
Cooldown Q also plays this up right. Like Q is always going to land. You're always going to apply the dot. Like I don't expect that to change. But the option of considering a squishy or higher damage build like a Blackfire Torch is only really makes sense if he has enough AP ratios to say that the bonus AP on Blackfire Torch beats the things that Landers are doing. Again, I don't expect him to, but in order
basically, like when you're buffing AP ratios, like alternative builds become viable, like Rabadon, Shadow Flame, blah blah blah, depending on how big your AP ratios are. And even if those builds are not optimal, they're at least not turbo bad then, right? So like some low elo Bob can build Shadow Flame, Rabadon, Swain.
We would need to buff some AP ratios. A lot of things we could do here, a lot of tweaks here, but just like, hey, you know, a lot of number tweaks are certainly possible for this champion. And then finally, our adjustments. This one I am not 100% sure what we're going to do. But one thing I have tried that has broadly tested well is giving him more Demon Flares. So right now there's two versions I can see. There might be another one by the time we actually ship this.
Oh.
So one was you Demon Flare on Transform, and you get it back every couple of seconds or whatever. That tested okay. The idea of getting more Demon Flares actually tested pretty well. The one I'm going to try next is just when you transform, you Demon Flare. And then the rest of your ulti is just, you have the dot, congratulations. And the reason why I'm actually believe this is a solid direction is it gives you punchiness on pressing R. It also gives you a way to hit confirm this to your kit, because you can R the Demon Flare heavy slow. Like we can choose the slow duration and potency to say, I Demon Flare E and it's guaranteed because I burned my damn ultimate for it. It's mine, let's go. And I Demon Flare into E, yoink you back, land W, land Q, right? Just like, I can full combo you, you're into melee range, I deal double damage with Q, I do all these things, you're, you know, let's go. And E might have like a cooldown incentive, and so I can like cast it again later on, and you know, you're trapped in here with me kind of thing. But the immediacy and potency if I press R and something happens, has generally been a really, really good thing. So this is one thing that I'm pretty keen on. I'm unsure if we'll take away second Demon Flare or not. Depends on power budgets and what actually feels best for the champion. But it's on the table.
Okay.
Again, still a fair bit away. I haven't had time in about a month for any meaningful iterations. So when I get time, I'll pick this back up. I think we're pretty close. The types of things here, I think, are all pretty shippable. Again, got to figure out what we're doing with R. Got to figure out what we're doing with numbers. But these have all been, I think, pretty positive for making the champion feel better to play. All right, moving forward.
So honestly, most of these things are just like really like kind of like good boss for the champion, right? So that means they're gonna have to like make the numbers like a lot weaker in some places. Like that's just reality. You can't just ship all of that to the champion. This champion would be probably way too high win rate. They'll have to like probably make W slow last, do more less damage. They're probably gonna have to make Q hurt less. They're probably gonna have to make maybe base stats worse. They're maybe gonna have to make E worse. Maybe they're gonna have to make some ult damage worse, you know?
These have all been, I think, pretty positive for making the champion feel better to play. All right, moving forward.
So next thing. Okay, this is probably the biggest thing so far, and I haven't seen any of that yet.
This one is also not going to happen right away. This has been an ongoing project for a little while. And there's a couple things I want to talk about here. So first of all, let's talk about potential bounty systems. And what I'm going to talk about here are temporal distortions. What I mean by that is if you have an ongoing bounty system, such as like just strictly the more powerful you are, the more you give away, that is when that can happen. So for example, Defense of the Ancients, I think from the very beginning up through Dota 2, the amount of gold a champion gets when they die is based on their level. I'm also, actually, I'm certain this has been inherited from Warcraft 3 and still is retained, is the XP something gives away is based on level as well. In League of Legends, the amount of XP a champion gives when it dies is based on the champion level. Some other things as well, but the base value always increases based on what level the victim is when they die. And so that is functionally an ongoing bounty system, right? The value of something is just simply goes up the more high value they are, period, just like as an underlying level. And there's no like resetting here, right? Like champions never become worth less XP as time goes on. They only ever go up. So there's an ongoing thing here. Now there's another version, which is what League of Legends uses and a lot of other games use as well, which is what I'm just going to call instantaneous bounties. What I mean by that is we can call it extemporaneous instead, but who cares, whatever. The point of this is something that says, at this point in time, I am worth more or less than other champions because of instances, because of things going on, right? In League of Legends right now, this is, are you on a 7-kill streak? Well, if so, you're worth like 600 bonus gold because you have built up a bounty for getting 6 kills in a row, and when I shut you down, it's going to go back down to +0. And so it's going to be an instantaneous payout, and then it's going to reset, which means there is a temporal distortion. What I mean by that is, hey, and we see this, for example, even in ongoing systems. So, for example, we've seen plenty of junglers say like, hey, I'm 5-0 with a 15 CS lead on the enemy jungler who's 2-0. Why are they higher level than me? Well, the ongoing systems change, right? Late game jungle camps worth more XP than early game jungle camps. Late game champ kills worth more XP than early game champ kills. Additionally, if you're getting a champ kill shared with someone else, aka, you know, they took half the XP because they were around, or maybe it's split 3 ways. Like if you get 5 kills ganking bot lane, and they get 2 kills by solo killing the enemy mid laner, that guy with 2 solo kills got more XP than you did because you were sharing lower value champions 3 ways, 5 times versus a higher value champion twice solo. Yep, one's better than the other, and it's the 2. So in some cases, there aren't ways of undoing this, even with an ongoing system. But in the instantaneous case, right, you'd be like, hey, I'm 7-2 and have a bounty, you're 7-2 and you don't. It's like, yeah, because they went 7-0 and died twice, you went 0-2 and then got 7 kills. They already paid out their bounty, you just haven't yet. So the thing is, no matter what you do, there will always be temporal distortions that I think are pretty much unsolvable. Unless you never want to do payouts and you never want to change XP values at all, which I don't think is correct at all, right? Like, I think a level 8 champion should be worth more XP than a level 1 champion, which means these distortions will simply exist, and there's no way around them if you want RPG systems to make sense at all.
I get what he's trying to say.
By changing how bounties work, which is the current goal here, we're going to have different temporal distortions. And I'm basically relying on players to understand that this is like going to happen no matter what, and that the ones we're going to get are going to be acceptable and worth doing. So the goal here of the bounties,
he needs to go to the point.
Let's talk about goals. The goal of the bounty is to actually increase the gameplay quality around bounties themselves. That is the primary goal, is to actually make the types of bounties that champions acquire and the times they pay out make more sense to the game overall. To overall be higher quality as a bounty system, with tuning levels that we can use reliably to get game states that we want, with overall making champion payouts when there is a bounty, when there isn't a bounty, to make them make more sense. The overall goal is gameplay quality. To achieve that, the design is to shift bounties to not be streak-based, but be gold-based. So streak-based bounties, the way they
bounties not be streak-based, but be gold-based. So what does this exactly mean? This means that what? Like this means that like the way the current bounty system works is like you got 4 kills, then you get 5 kills, 6 kills, 7 kills, and once you have like a lot of streak-based kills, you're worth a lot of gold, right? But now instead of that is going to be more of gold based. So if I understand correctly, like what, you're punished more for farming, or what, or like, or does this mean like, oh, if you solo kill someone 4 times, but they got the waves and you didn't, and they're even gold, you're not going to be the one with bounty?
The design is to shift bounties to not be streak-based, but be gold-based. So streak-based bounties, the way they essentially work, is says, if you got 2 kills in a row, you have a bounty on your head. If you got 3 kills in a row, that is a different bounty on your head. If you got 4 kills in a row, that is a different bounty on your head. If you have died twice in a row, you are worth under 300 gold. It doesn't matter if you were 50 and 0, then died twice in a row. Your baseline kill gold will be below 300. And it doesn't matter if you're 0 and 17. If you got 2 kills in a row, you have a 100 gold bounty on your head. Now, that is very understandable. The rules are extremely straightforward. Your streak goes up, your streak goes down. That's basically it. There's a secondary rule around if you're in the negative, farming minions will claw you back up. So you can't go 0, 10 to 300 CS and be worth minimum gold, generally speaking. That's intentional. I think that is reasonable.
That is reasonable.
There's another rule that is sort of in our current system, which is on CS bounties, which is unfortunately very opaque, which is a problem here, right? Which is one of the sort of discoveries we got from that system where, okay, the fact that I'm getting bounties from farming is something that I think is palatable and reasonable that players can accept. But because the farm is
Okay, it is reasonable, but the system is so bad, Phreak. Like, you don't understand it. Like, I have a game where I'm CSing to perfection, because I'm playing to perfection, and I'm 20 CS up 1v1, and then I get randomly a bounty. Like, why? Only for being 20 CS up off my opponent, because I played so much better, I get a bounty?
Based on the average farm of the enemy team, you can go equal against the enemy AD carry and have a bounty because your top laner is winning, because their top laner is not farming. And that's the part that breaks down. Like, yes, you can understand and intuit, like, hey, I'm getting more farm than the average of their team, but, like, something's off here.
Yes,
even
it
though
is.
the rules are consistent. They're actually pretty simple. There are things that are like, oh, players start to balk at this, and it doesn't really make sense, and it's not understandable. Very understandable, okay, very reasonable. So we're going to a purely gold-based system. So what it means is when you get gold from killing or assisting an enemy champion, your bounty will rise. Now, it will rise up to a threshold where it's functionally 0, and then roughly the equivalent of being 2-0, you will break the threshold and now have a bounty on your head, which is very similar to now, where no matter which 2 kills you got, 2 kills is a bounty. This one says, well, once you earn about 500 gold from killing, bounty, which means that if you're killing someone who's worth 100 gold 3 times, no bounty. You only got 300 gold from killing. The nice thing is,
that is smart. Okay. This is gonna count your gold instead. So if somebody is 0-7, they're worth 100 gold only, you kill them 3 times, you're not gonna get as big of a bounty.
Means that you can never betray yourself by getting a bounty. One thing that's currently true in League of Legends is getting a kill can punish you, right? If you and all of your teammates having a horrible, horrible game, you're all worth 100 gold because you're completely chain feeding, everyone's 0 and 12, and you get a kill. All right, well, your gold value just went up to 300, and in fact, you're now on a 1-0 streak. One more kill, you're bounty on your head. And your teammates all got an assist, which then decremented their death streaks. They now count as 0 and 13, or whatever, instead, right? They'll start clawing out from negative. Pick a Morse example of being 0 and 4, and they will all go up gold value. You will go up a lot of gold value, and because that gold value gets paid out into assists as well, it's in fact 1.5x that difference. So your 300 gold kill means you're worth 300 more gold on death, because you'll pay up 200 more base and then another 100 more in the assist pool, plus all of your teammates moving themselves up as well. And it's like, you literally can get punished for getting a kill. Aside from XP, sure, but like, again, there's problems here. So there's gonna be the weird thing where like, someone will be negative gold value, they'll be getting crushed, they'll get a kill, and they'll still be negative. And that will be different. That will be different. And I have to rely that everyone's going to understand that this is going to make sense. This also means that a 0015 Janna, who's got a 25 stack Magi's, or nearly, I think she'd only be at 20. No, she'd be at 25 stacks, will have a bounty on her head, because she has earned 15 75 gold assists, which is like 1,000 gold. She's earned 1,000 gold from assists. It's not a big streak, it's equivalent to a 3 kill streak, but she'll have like a 150 gold bounty on her head, because 0015 makes sense to me. Like, that is reasonable. She has earned profits, right? She has earned her profits from being in a lot of successful PvP combat. She is up 1,000 gold off the enemy support from getting assists. She will have a small bounty on her head from being 0015. The Magi stacks work here, right? So should assists for PvP bounties, right? Okay, next thing. Because it is purely gold-based, the amount of gold you give away by dying directly is offset by the amount of gold you get from getting kills or assists, which means a champion who is 0, 5, and 5 will be negative. On live, as long as it went like death assist, death assist, death assist, death assist, the champ would always be worth 300 gold. But imagine you were getting assists in full-on team fights where you split 150 gold 4 ways, and you're like, I died and gave away 450, I got an assist and gained 40. I'm down 400 net gold in this interaction. Now, of course, someone else got the kill, and they went positive, fine, and they can get the big bounty benefit here by getting an actual kill. But what happens here is, because the current system is so streak-based, champions are constantly shoved to being worth 300 gold at all times. What that means is the losing team is constantly worth the same amount of gold as the winning team, because it's very, very easy to get yourself a reset back to 300, even if you're getting completely slammed. So what's going to happen here is the losing team will frequently, at current tuning anyway, unless we add new levers to reset this more often, the losing team will constantly be worth less than 300 gold for anyone who's not having a good game, which means the amount of snowballing for the winning team is going to be much lower. Which I think is worthwhile for gameplay quality. But what this means, though, is that 5-0, like, I can be 5-0, you can be 5-0, and our bounties will be different, because my 5-0 was killing Sion on repeat 5 times, and it was worth 100 gold by the end of it, so I didn't get very much gold. Your 5-0 could be you ganked mid, then bot, then mid again, and everyone was full value, and so you have more bounty. We're both 5-0, you earned more gold than I did, I earned less gold than you, your bounty is higher. But I'm relying on players to understand the distortion effect here, and understand that, like, it's gold-based. 5-0 is not the same 5-0 at all times. The final thing I'll talk about this is that there is still going to be functional CS bounty. So as I mentioned on the live game.
Okay, I mean, it's hard to talk about so many things he says here, because he's just like yapping and you don't have the concrete numbers ahead of you. I mean, some things I'm hearing do make sense, what he's saying, like, because the system has so many flaws that the players have been able to find these flaws. Like, for example, like he mentioned, like, you can be 0-10 worth 100 gold, and it's better to not get a kill than to get a kill, because then you'll be reset back to 300 and stuff like that. And with this new system, this is not going to be the case like that, I suppose. But at the same time, when I hear all of this, what he's talking about, I just think that there's so much room to fuck up. There's just so much room that they fuck up something here and they make this new bounty system be even worse than the old one. If something breaks or they haven't accounted for something, or maybe there's some new loop that players discover that they can abuse.
If you're in a negative state and you last hit some minions, you kill some monsters, your gold value goes up. Basically, it's the way it is on live is every 2,000 gold from farm is -1 death in like functional practice. Because it's going to be gold based, it's 1,000 gold from farm is worth 100 gold from kills or whatever. Like, it could be whatever number I want it to be, right? That's not the actual numbers, doesn't really matter here. But it's like, oh yeah, every 1,000 gold makes me worth 100 more gold. So if I was worth -100, I earned 1,000 gold from farming like 10 waves. I'm a normal champion again, right? I got 60 CS, I undid everything that I lost. I'm back to 300 gold or something like that, right? That's more like accurate to the system. Okay, reasonable. The other side, though, is instead of positive bounties saying, hey, based on the average CS of the enemy team, give me bounties based on whatever, it's going to be like, no, dude, just farming minions gives you some bounty. Now, again, there's still a threshold, right? If I'm 000 and I get like 100 CS, I might cross threshold because I earned 1,000 gold from farming, and maybe it should be worth like +50, +100, something like that, maybe, right? If I'm 3-0 with 100 CS, I will definitely have a bounty from both sources, right? This will all scale additively. Because I'm 3-0 and have another 1,000 gold from farm, yeah, I'm up 2,000 gold. I'm valuable, right? And so this will all have to be tuned, all these things that will all have to exist, but like, hey, that's going to be there. The other thing that we're adding in is a hook into the objective bounty system that says if you're on the losing team, depress everyone's positive bounties, right? Okay, we're getting slammed, but at least my mid laner 7-0. But we are like hard losing. We're down every dragon, every lane except mid is losing. Oh, and my Syndra just gave away 1,000 gold to the Master Yi who ganked. We weren't even winning. Now, if your team is objective bounties, anyone's positive bounty on your team will be suppressed based on how far behind you are. We're using that as the system for determining who's winning and losing. It doesn't have to be based on objective bounties themselves. Currently it is. We just like hook into the script basically.
There's just so much things in the game that make you help come back. Like, that just seems like another thing where it's like, if you are losing, it's gonna help you come back.
But this allows us to say like, hey, if you're a losing team, we don't need the comeback mechanism. We can soften this down. We can soften it to 0 if we really want to. We can, the scalars are there, right? The ratios are there. The soaring is there. But to say, hey, we can devalue these. And so all of these have generally at this point produced high gameplay quality. I'm actually pretty confident in what we have in testing in bounties right now. I think we are getting good results here. However, because it is much harder to understand gold-based than Phreak-based, what we've discovered is there is a lot of understandability hurdles to clear. This is part of why bounties are not ready to ship, is because consistent playtesting feedback has been that it is much, much harder for players to understand why their bounties are where they are, especially because they are so clearly different from live. Like, a 0, 6, and 8 Sejuani on live will pretty much always be worth 300 gold. She will never be worth 300 gold in this system, because the 0, 6, and 8 Sejuani has given away thousands of gold from dying and earned very little gold from PvP combat. She has not gotten rich off of PvP combat at all, and likely hasn't gotten very rich off of jungle camps, well, that's going to depend on farming bounties and how much that alleviates stuff. But if she's getting objectively far behind in gold, she's not a big champion, right? And this has a very strong effect of like making tank supports worth a lot less gold. It's going to make them much stronger. It's going to have an effect of making like low farm champions worth a lot less gold. This will be true. This will happen, of course.
Holy, yeah, that's also scary, right? Like, you have a Nautilus player just beating their ass off, or Sejuani or something, and it's just gonna make them worth even less gold? Really?
And so what we sort of discovered is that, like, hey, we sometimes get to states where players don't really understand how they got where they are. And so we have some things to solve. We have some things that are in flight which should make this better. Right, this is still an active iteration.
We're buffing supports, guys.
But there's room for a lot of improvement in terms of letting people know what's actually going on in the bounty system. So one thing, for example, by the way, is there is no record at all of any champion on live, and this hasn't been true forever, for 15 years, of a champion on live being in a negative bounty state. You only know when you got the kill, you kill the 0-5 Jinx, you go, oh, I got 123 from that kill. And then you forget and you move on and you never remember ever again. Jinx has no idea she's not astro feeding. And of course, her teammates have no idea that like the 0-6 Jinx was not giving away 300 gold per death. There's no way of knowing any of this stuff. And so like making that kind of information more understandable, more not only just like available for players to see, but also to understand the inputs that have gotten them there, are all valuable things that say, oh, okay, these are all things that are really good that'll help players understand the bounty system better, and then understand actually their place in the game and how things are going and whatnot. And again, this is sort of the part that's under active iteration right now.
So wait, they're gonna make you aware, if you press tab or whatever, how much gold a champion is going to be worth if you go kill them, or what?
Is increasing the understandability of the bounty system. Spent a lot of time here. I'll spend this much time again when we actually ship the thing in a few months or whatever, but I think it's progressing very well. I'm quite confident in the gameplay results here, and we have to kind of solve players understanding it, because I think it is a much better system. All right, let's move forward. One of the big projects that is in flight that is almost certainly going to ship with the Split 3 launch is global nerfs to items. The primary goal is to make combat more readable. So this was driven initially by a consistent urge to slow down combat pacing in League of Legends. Now, I have spent a lot of time looking at old champions like, hey, so really, how much damage did Annie do back in 2012? So here's a random note. Morgana Q's damage hasn't changed in about 14 years. I think the last time Morgana Q's damage or AP ratio changed was 2010. June of 2010. I looked at it today. So unless I'm overlooking something, Morgana Q hasn't changed in literally 14 years.
Okay.
Morgana is still a real champion who exists in current League of Legends. Now, her W has changed a lot, granted. You know, her R has changed around a little bit. But, like, looking at Annie, looking at, you know, like, any of the old betas, like 2010, you know, Annie, Anivia, Morgana as three of the primary examples here, it's like, these numbers have not changed meaningfully. They've gotten baseline way more.
The numbers have not changed, but other things have changed, right?
Durable. We've given champions a ton more armor and MR and health over time. Like, these have all increased globally across time. I know I investigated, I mentioned this in another video a while ago, I investigated, like, the total impact of, like, runes and master systems. Like, those haven't really changed either. And in fact, with, like, the world's with Worlds coming in pretty soon, watching the streams of, like, here's all the old world championships over time. We also, I remember, like, spent some time watching old champ spotlights just, like, for fun. Like, someone was watching them just for funsies, and I, like, was watching over their shoulder. And it's like, no, League has always had very fast combat. Like, the thing that annoys me is the refrain that somehow we have undone the durability update, which, like, strictly isn't true. Because
yeah, it's not true that they have undone durability updates. That people who say that are obviously incorrect. I think in early game, it is very noticeable the champions are way tankier. But I think mid to late game, there's been cases where champions are just dying too quickly.
Have the numbers. If you want to say that League combat feels too fast, feel free. You can, that is at least an accurate statement of how you feel about League of Legends the game. But to say that somehow we have, like, massively power crept damage in the game, like, I have checked so many champions across years, and, like, so many systems and whatnot, and it's like, no, actually, for the most part, champs do the same amount of damage they used to, and their pre-game systems and summoner spells do the same amount of damage they used to as well. What's happened is our items have gotten a little bit stronger. That is true, but only a little bit. And players have gotten better at farming. So they have more gold, and gold trends toward damage. But those are the only actual factors that have meaningfully changed in League of Legends on net over the last 15 years. So to say that Riot undid the durability update is false, because we never even undid champion durability. Not really. Other than items getting a little bit stronger and players getting a lot better at League of Legends. That's mostly it, actually. Anyway, though, it is worth arguing that, hey, items have gotten too good, which is indeed why I'm trying to nerf them. But to finish my, like, soapbox point, though, we didn't make any meaningful changes since 2022. Like, we didn't suddenly give everyone 10% more damage, right? Because, like, that update gave everyone, like, 10% more health level 1, and then another functional 10% more health through armor, MR, and health growth by the end of the game. There was no global 170 champions did 10% more damage change in the last 2 years. Like, that strictly didn't happen. And so I urge people to try to be a bit more rational in their statements and, you know, like, root them in things like, I think combat pacing is still too fast, because I would agree with you that I think combat pacing is too fast. Okay, so to move on, the goal is to make combat more readable by making things slower. Now, of course, there's plenty of things in League that haven't changed over time. The rate at which minions spawn has not ever changed really in League of Legends. The baseline movement speed of champions has generally not changed over time.
That's debatable. Baseline move speed of champions? Yeah, baseline, right? But look at the amount of items they also add, and it makes champions run so fucking fast.
Stun durations in League of Legends has not really changed over time. There's a lot of things that, like, haven't really moved, and it's kind of a good thing, actually, because it means that a lot of the sort of bedrock of the game hasn't really moved around very much. But it's sort of nice. I like sort of to anchor myself back to, like, well, what was League like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? What worked, what didn't, like, what's really changed, what hasn't, whatever. And so that was, like, a thing where, like, hey, you know, what were things like?
He also said stun duration not changing, but that's kind of cope IMO. Like, there's been so many spells in the last year 2, 3 where they buffed, like, 0.25 on the stun or snare or root.
And go back and be like, so what did Trinity Force do?
Plus there's less tenacity.
2011, right? How much damage did Infinity Edge actually give back in 2013? Like, how much is really actually provide? Like, what did Blade of the King actually do back then? What did these items actually do back then? What do these items actually do? Because I can say, like, well, I actually know that we haven't made the game more lethal if the items aren't any better or whatever, right? All these things. It's like, it's worth the research task because I like knowing. And then it's still worth being like, well, even if nothing has changed, if the game should be slower, the game should be slower, and that's fine. So anyway, let's move on. The goal is, let's make the game a little bit slower. Let's make combat more readable.
Okay.
The output here is that about 95% of legendary items are nerfed in some form. The very strongest items in the game are nerfed 10 to 13%.
Ooh, that's a lot.
Even ones that aren't getting purchased very much are often nerfed like 3 to 5%, of which there are many, by the way, right? Like if you go look at an amalgamation of every item in League of Legends, there's a bunch of items that are bought like almost once per game across the entire game, and then a whole bunch that are bought like 1 every 10 games, right? And it's like, well, you know, it turns out if you nerf these all by 10% and you nerf these by 5%, their threat level goes down by close to 10% because 4 items are getting purchased, right?
Yes.
One thing I'm actually relying on players to understand, by the way, is you're gonna be like, I'm playing Riven, and I don't think Riven's strong enough, and you nerfed all of Riven's items. Yes, and I also nerfed all of everyone else's items. And so I'm relying on players to understand that I'm nerfing your toys, but I'm nerfing other people's toys too.
It's kind of funny because they just buffed like Cosmic and Protobelt and stuff like that on mid lane, but now these items are gonna lose probably the buffs they got or whatever, right? And then it makes sense because everything else is also gonna be nerfed.
And that the end result should be combat that is more readable. So things I'm pruning out here. Basically, it's asking the question, who is allowed to do what? And trying to draw stronger lines in terms of what various subclasses have access to, what they should have access to, what should be reasonable, what is not reasonable. Who's allowed to do what, and having stronger stances on stat allowances. So for example, if you're a burst mage and you want to one-shot people, you can one-shot people. You can go build a bunch of ability power, or attack damage, or lethality, or flat magic pen, or whatever, and your proc effects, and you can one-shot squishies. But then you are not getting ability haste, you are not getting durability, you are not getting movement speed, you are not getting other things. If you want to one-shot people, you can one-shot people, and you're not getting anything else. The rest got to come from you. The rest got to come from your champion or your skill as a player. Another thing is overall a look at specifically the tank system versus other systems. So I think right now the tank item system, outside of like a very clear outlier in Warmogs, which is going to next patch, I think the tank item system is actually the weakest item system currently in League of Legends.
Makes sense.
And so my opinion here is that tank items should feel in class for melee non-assassins. Like, I know when items are like way too strong, like we've had many versions of Jack Show where it was the best item of the game, and you'd be like, I'm playing Swain or Varus or Vayne or whatever, and I'm just going to, at a certain point, I'm just going to buy Jack Show because it's just the best item of the game. And of course, if we want you to not do that, we need to make sure that your damage keeps scaling off of ability power, attack damage, whatever. But if we're okay with, say, like, Swain's allowed to build a Jack Show, this means that Swain doesn't need to have really, really strong AP scaling. He needs to have good enough bases that just leveling up and buying some tank items are worth it. But if you want to make sure that, like, Vayne or Varus or Yasuo are never allowed to buy a Jack Show, even if it's strong, you have to make sure that at every step of the way, they need more attack damage, they need, you know, more ability power, they need more flat pen, more attack, more whatever. So for an example, this was an explicit goal with Riven when she launched, where she had a shield that scaled off of bonus AD. In fact, her entire kit was a bunch of bonus AD ratios, because the explicit design goal was Riven, the way you get tankier is you build more longswords, and you get more CDRs, you can cast more shields and dash more often. And to this day, Riven buys a lot of longswords. And I think that was actually very successful. I think it's a good thing to say, no, Riven, you are meant to be buying very little baseline durability. Yeah, you might get a little bit of durability here. You know, you get your Death Dance, you get your Maw, you get a Rav Hydra. Like, those are fine. Those are in class. But, like, hey, whatever. But for Vi and Wukong and Dr. Mundo, I mean, Mundo actually straight up tank, but Darius, like, and then even, like, potentially Gwen and potentially Swain and, you know, any of these, like, non-assassin melee champions, tank items should feel at least attractive. Renekton going for something like X plus Black Cleaver plus Randuin's should feel natural. It should feel fine to be like, oh, they're running double marksman. Let's go build a Thornmail. And Thornmail should feel really good to purchase on him. Because, right, in the hierarchy of who's most durable, you have tanks, and then juggernauts, and then divers, and then skirmishers and battle mages, and then pretty much the squishy classes, right? Artillery, ADCs, casters, assassins, all those things are all on the bottom tier, but like, okay, tanks build tank items, juggernauts should frequently build tank items, and
I agree with him, but this is also really hard, right? Like, it's hard to make Thornmail be good on champs like Renekton when they buy no other armor item, but then not make it like Giga OP on like tanks who do buy more armor with that. Like,
divers are next. So, and again, like, to me, like, Vi and Wukong are the, like, most typical divers here, where they have the target access, but they're not meant to literally one-shot you. These champs should all feel good about building items like Randuin's. And this means those items have to be strong enough that they at least are close to as powerful as fighter items, such that they are options for them. And if we want them out of the hands of Yasuo and Riven, whatever, I have to make sure that they just need a lot of longswords. And that way we can keep these classes separate and say, it's okay for Rumble to pretend he's an AP Juggernaut sometimes, because if he doesn't need AP to keep up, if he's still going to be useful late game because he leveled up 5 times, like Darius gains something like 5 base attack damage per level, all of his spells functionally care about base AD as well as bonus AD, and his passive has absurd levels. It's going to say, like, get another 140 bonus AD just by hitting level 17.
Yes.
He's allowed to buy Dead Man's Plate, right?
Yes.
And that is reasonable. I think that is correct for basically the second tankiest group of champs in the game. And to be fair, like, there are AP divers and AP skirmishers and AP juggernauts as well. Again, Rumble could easily be one. They need to feel like they are allowed to build this way. The items have to be good enough, and their ability to skip AP or AD in a slot when the system calls for it, when the game calls for it, needs to be allowable. Which means they need to have enough things like level scaling via rank ups or passives or whatever that it is allowed for them. Like, this should be correct that in a pinch a Juggernaut can kind of tank. They can't start a fight
205 AD from Darius passive level 17.
Like Malphite or Ornn can, but they can at least frontline and screw with triple AD. And so that's going to be like the biggest sort of sticker shock here, right? For most classes, like, oh, what do we do to ADC items? We nerf them because all they do is give AD, AS crit, and special effects. Well, they went down 5 to 10%. All right, well, what do assassin items do?
And they're still good, right? But yeah, like, holy shit, like ADC items like Kraken and Shiv are so broken. It's like not real. These items give you, like, it's crazy that AD items just give you every stat your champion wants. The only thing they didn't give was lifesteal, right? But that's what you were able to get like from runes or whatever. They gave you attack speed, move speed, crit, AD, and a passive. Like, it's crazy how much stats these items give.
Well, they give AD lethality and haste. Okay, well, we lowered the haste and whatever else we had to lower. Like, they went down, 5 to 7%. All right, what do mage items do? Well, they give AP, haste, flat pen. All right, well, we nerfed one of the things by a little bit. Hey, what do fighter items do? Well, they give damage and durability. And to be clear, fighters is too broad of a brush, because Riven is not Darius. They have entirely different item needs. Their items almost never overlap in any way at all. That is intentional. That is correct. That is good. Skirmishers and Juggernauts do not buy the same items almost ever. These are separate item systems. And so I encourage you, when you eventually see the changes come out, and you're like, I'm playing fighters. Wait, you did this with fighter items? Keep in mind what is a skirmisher item versus what is a Juggernaut item. So I'm going to spend some more time in here because I think it's worth talking about. Broad strokes, Juggernaut items are, and this is like very broad, like this is not getting applied like with a brush to everything. It's about 50% damage, 50% durability. Right? Consider tank items are 100% durability, or like 90% with 10% damage. Things like Iceborne Gauntlet has a sheen effect on it, and Sunfire Kick has some damage on it and whatnot. Like, yeah, but then next to tank items is Juggernaut items, and so 50-50 is like the starting point. And then plus or minus based on whatever you do for the item, right? It's fine. Dead Man's Play is a Juggernaut item, and it has like a sheen effect, and then it's just tank stats, and that's fine. Like, Udyr loves this item, Set likes this item, it's totally reasonable. Then we have divers. Divers are like 3 to 1 or 2 to 1 damage to durability, roughly. And so this is like Stridebreaker is a diver item. Not Dead Man's Play. Death's Dance is a diver or skirmisher item based on who you ask. Ma is a diver or skirmisher item based on who you ask, whatever. But like, like Stridebreaker, as mentioned again, the stat profile of like Black Cleaver or Chempunk Chainsword or anything like that is going to be in the middle ground, where it's a little bit squishy for a Juggernaut, it's a little bit tanky for a Skirmisher, but this means that it's in the midpoint for all of the fighters. Like, if we wanted to make a Skirmisher Grievous Wounds and a Juggernaut Grievous Wounds, we could, and a Skirmisher Armor Pen and a Juggernaut Armor Pen, we could, right? And that would be make more items and tune them for the class. That is not unreasonable to do, and we could like try to separate out, like, here's the Juggernaut suite, here's the Skirmisher suite, and like we blow apart the shop and have more tabs there, right? Because like, we have like Mage generically, right? And like Nashor's Tooth is there despite it being a Skirmisher AP item.
Yeah, Phreak is yapping a bit too much here. I'm gonna skip this.
Off what?
I feel like I got the point. Like, it's good. I think it's good.
You can end up building a pretty robust understanding of, like, what these effects are really worth, and saying, okay, take.
Next topic, please.
And available for Unity.
Oh, we're almost
Riot
at
brought
the
this
end.
up in there is base stats, whatever, and yeah, the Onyx are going to
basically. These are good things, I think. Like, items being a little bit weaker, right? He's gonna nerf them a little bit further, so then like in late game there's not so much like stats on champions and this and that, and overall the fights are going to be a little bit slower, so there's gonna be a little bit more skill expression because everything's not gonna be like as one-shot and everything. But at the same time, I think this also means that certain champions are going to become a lot better, right? Like, champions that either don't rely as much on gold, or champions that just possibly want to fight longer and they're not like as bursty, are probably just gonna become like better, right? Like, either like if your kit has like percent damage or like high base damage or something like that. I think these type of champs are just gonna become better. And then champions that really rely on items are probably gonna become a little bit weaker. So then there's probably gonna need to be balance changes, right? Like buff X champion, nerf X champion. That's how I see it.
Scale, but whatever. Not much else to bring up here ultimately. I think this is sort of the overall place here. Again, the goal is make the game less lethal, make fights more readable, slow things down.
Okay.
Alrighty. Another project that Live been working on. We brought this up. Riot brought this up in there was the like dev check-in video from 3 days ago. There's also an article came out. These are just quotes from the article. I'm not here to leak anything in terms of what we're doing here. But basically it's like, yeah, we're updating griefing detection, taking deliberate actions with the intent of reducing the team or a teammate's likelihood of success, right? Those are things that we do not like. It should catch obvious things. We're going to use a compound data to look at all behavior in totality. And we're going to see more updates in the near future as we start taking actions. So this is something that Live was working on. So I, of course, had oversight here since I'm the design lead of Live, but this is not my project in particular, but one of our designers has been working on this. Our engineers have been working on this as we've been designing up what these detections look like, how they work, how we're going to do stuff here. This has been a long-term ongoing project. This is one of the things I brought up, I don't know, a long time ago. And it's like, hey, we're working on some longer-term stuff you're going to hear about in a long time. This is one of these things, right? That like,
I'm getting banned.
It's not my place to bring them up. I'm not here to give any new information. But like, hey, I would like to give credit to the designers that I work with when I'm able to. And it's like, here's a thing that we're ready to talk about.
I'm not going to be banned for griefing.
And I'm excited because this has been a lot of hard work from some people who care a lot about League of Legends. And yay Live, right? And this is why, by the way, like, one, the designers are game designers, and two, we're not the balance team. This is not a balance change. The games that worked on this, right? I just like, I like trying to help fix problems in like word choice, right? Because that way we can all communicate better if we can all use terminology that makes sense and lines up with reality. Such as Riot undoing the durability update is not true. If you feel like the game is too fast, that's something else. Anyway, hooray! I'm very glad about this. Very, very cool stuff. One thing we're also looking here is and you had changes about this in 0.16 or 0.15 with early death timers, but this is even farther out. This is farther out than like Swain or bounties or item systems, whatever. But we are actively investigating this space, which is summoner teleport and early laning overall. So problem one, TP is actually a bit of a win more summoner. That even if your lane is not highly lethal, or you're in fact the advantage person in your lane, it's often correct to run TP because you just push your opponent under lane, you yourself, you recall for your first base, and you're like, cool. If you don't take TP, I'm going to farm a plate, and you're going to lose two waves. And now I am even farther ahead than Ignite would have been. Also, TP is the best late game summoner because TP is really good.
Yes.
So TP is pretty overpowered.
You know what makes TP really broken that I feel like I never see Rioters mention? Baron. When you have TP and Baron, it's so OP because Baron recall is so fucking OP. And also, I really like additional Baron recall in the game because it makes it so once you get Baron, you're so much more free to actually try to push your advantage. Because I think what would happen if Baron recall wasn't in the game, because League of Legends players these days are so good at reading map states and they're so good at like pushing waves and rotating and just in general the game knowledge of the game has gone a lot up. I feel like if Baron recall wasn't in the game, if you had Baron, then a lot of players would just try to like push sidelines in, and when you would group mid lane as 5, like your top and bot would be pushed in, and then you would be forced to base, and then the sidelines that were pushed would go mid, and then they would create number advantage there, and then you would have to back there, and then blah blah blah. So basically, like, Baron recall kind of has to exist. You know what I mean? But, yeah, what makes Baron recall OP is TP. Like, in late game, once you have Baron, like, you take a fight, you survive 10, 20% HP, you press B, you reset, and you start TPing back in. And then, essentially, the fight is not a 5v5, it's like a 6v5. Like, it's just broken.
It is also a win more summoner, which feels really odd when, like, Ignite should be the win more summoner, right? Like, if anything. And so that's a problem that does not have an easy solution, because there's another problem, which is that lanes can be really, really punishing. And so the fact that teleport exists allows players to not instantly lose the game off a single death, because that really sucks to lose the game on instantly single death. The average League of Legends game is like 28 minutes long, and if you lost the game at minute 4, you don't want to play the next 24 minutes, but your teammates aren't behind.
Phreak says, it would really suck to lose a game based on like one single death, but this is like a lot of games are like that in high elo.
They want to play a game of League of Legends, and if you could suck it up and play weak side and just like have a bad game for the 20 minutes, your team might be able to win. But we know a lot of players have big egos, and if they can't carry, they don't want to do it. And to be fair, some of this is like a human's problem. Like, people are selfish, people are kind of bad, I wish people were going to behave better, but we also can't control players. We can certainly design the game to make them have different incentives, which, hey, by the way, is what we're doing. So broadly speaking, can we make Summoner Teleport not a win more summoner? There's lots of things we could do. We could make the summoner start on cooldown, so you just don't have a summoner spell for 6 minutes. We could make the spell, you know, like, give everyone spellbook and they turn Ignite into teleport at 20 minutes or whatever. Like, there's things that could work that like that all have flaws. And again, but because this is a thing, we can't just delete it from the game, right? We wouldn't even want to. It actually does really, really good things. Like, this is not a problem statement, but like TP does very good things for the late game, by the way, right? TP is actually a good summoner spell for League of Legends the game. Just maybe, you know, the total output of things in lane is flawed here that we could design around and make a better system here. And again, so the other statement, the other problem is that lanes can be really punishing and the game can feel over very, very quickly. So, generally speaking, we would not ship a change that addresses problem 1 until other shipping changes that address problem 2. This is like a conjoined thing. We are currently working to identify what is the best version of TP for the game for our goals, and then acknowledging that this might include things like TP doesn't exist for 20 minutes or something, right? Once we lock down what this actually is in a way that we are comfortable with, where TP does not feel like a win more summoner, and it might not even require TP change, right? It could be like the way lanes play out is meaningfully different, such that TP doesn't actually factor into how the lane plays out. It's a possibility here, right? But it's explore this space and solve this problem. And then once we know what the solution is, it probably requires another set of solutions, which is now let's fix this because TP is no longer solving this, right? And once we have good solutions for both these, we're going to try to ship something. Again, this is a relatively early discovery. The most recent iterations of solutions for problem 1 have looked really promising. So I'm actually, my current optimistic outlook is that we're solving this really, really soon. And we're going to move on to this one. It's going to be something pretty cool, but we'll see. Again, this is pretty far out.
Okay, so what I think is going to happen if they are making changes to TP, I think most likely what they're going to do is like they're going to do something like, oh, you can't use TP for the first 5 minutes of the game. I think that's like the most simplest solution they can possibly put in the game. I don't think they're going to do anything else because I saw some other suggestions like, oh, if you use Ignite onto your opponent and you kill them in the next like X amount of seconds, you get like a faster recall or you get like home guards when you recall or something. I don't think that's going to go into the game because it's too much to like, it's too hard for like a player that doesn't read these type of patches to like completely realize this is in the game. I think it's just gonna be something like, oh, TP can be used for first 5 minutes of the game because that's like really easy to read because you start the game and then you're like the summoner spell already has a cooldown ticking.
So overall, what's going on right now with live design? Well, we have an eye on snowballing and combat pacing. I should actually have written TP here as well, but by changing bounty rules, the game should probably snowball less and make more sense and be more understandable. But we have a lot of control to make the game snowball more unless we want it to. And items explicitly will make the game snowball less as well. And so more games will be close for longer because of systems like bounties being better for the losing team and items being less snowbally. And just also combat pacing being better as well due to item changes. Additionally, giving players more early agency, right? Again, if we can solve the TP and early lane give up state, then we can have your lane feels closer for longer. You have more control over your game state because one death doesn't entirely end the game for you. It's not just over because of first blood. And you can keep playing because, being down 0-1 against Renekton does not signal the lane is instantly over. You still can come back, you still play, it's going to be okay. And another quick call out. This is not everything we're working on, but it's stuff that we're sharing for now. There's other stuff that's going on long-term, under the scenes, behind the scenes, whatever. But I want to give updates on a couple things that I talked about publicly before, an update on some of the projects that I'm working on, things I'm thinking about them. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Alright, we're done with Phreak's video. Some things are good. Items being weaker, good thing, I think. Bounty system being reworked, good thing as well, because fucking trash system right now at least. There's like TP being changed. Not sure how to feel about it. I don't think TP poses such a big issue on the game as many people might think, but at the same time, maybe they want to shake up things because TP is like really OP, so I kind of get it. Then there's like Swain and Aphelios. I mean, Swain does need rework for sure, or like some sort of work. The champ is like Giga OP crate, feels very bad to play even though he wins all the games, kinda get it. Aphelios doesn't seem like they're gonna do much with him, so that's kinda given up. Yeah, anyway. Items nerf being healthy for the game? I think so, honestly, I think so. It feels like first items are like so strong on so many classes, like I really think, like, for just looking at like mages, for example, Malignant Seraph, Ludens, and Blackfire Torch just give you like such insane amounts of stats for such cheap little price. Because they're obviously meant to be items that you rush, right? And then it's like, the same goes for like Kraken Shoe Bork, like for ADC class. I agree with Phreak that like tank items feel the worst, but at the same time, like I also think tank meta is just not. I hate it personally. I hate tank meta. I think it makes the game much worse when tanks are being played. I much prefer like bruisers or whatever. Like bruiser champs, like I don't know what do we have bruiser champs like Eclipse, Cleaver, Sunder Sky. I mean I don't know bruiser class. Like, I feel like mage and ADC items are sometimes like a bit too OP. Like Lianji this season, for example, has been very OP. Like, there's so many junglers that just buy Lianji and they're doing so much damage, and the item also makes you tanky because it gives you like 300 health really early in the game.